I am going to say that a large part of what I was going to mention tonight was in response to and aimed at newer people. And newer people includes if someone is seeing this 20 years from now, and I will hopefully be dead and on the farm, that you will be new people then. You rolling? So it's people that have had some minimal exposure to whatever this is. Please note I said that I was going to say that because all of this, to varying degrees, still applies to everyone, but you people who've been around for a while, you could take it as being a way to make you feel better that I didn't single you out. From newer people in other cities seeing this particularly, I continue over the last year to get letters, inquiries, and some of you, when I had shown up in other cities, attempted to make some mention to me in person about your past. I understand this, and every year or so I go back through it in some new way, or I go back through it. So I'm going to go back through some of it tonight. I get inquiries from people reading books of mine. They've seen some of these tapes in other cities, and they believe that they are indeed interested in this, but there are a whole genre of letters, inquiries, which is a reflection of the wiring system of these people, that go something along these lines. My, how much I loved your books, my, how much I believe I am interested in this, but wait until you hear the sorry, pitiful, disruptive life that I have led up until now. And it's not simply that they are seeking absolution, but the inquiries have to do with they believe that something they have done in their past. I was an alcoholic. A woman says I had an abortion 10 years ago. Someone says I was addicted to some drug. I was a part of some very foolish cult of some kind, and this is now plaguing me. Can you give me some hint? Can you give me a secret that will get me past this so I can go on to bigger and better things? There is no secret other than this, and this is the first secret. And if you people, newer or non-newer, if you have yet to realize this, you have yet to realize anything. And that is the validity for a few people of me saying that the past is of no consequence. And I do not say it on the basis of some kind of psychological attempt to explain away one's behavior, or as some psychological attempt to offer absolution, to offer freedom from one's guilt by saying, all right, everyone is fucked up in the past somewhere. Try and realize the error of your ways and don't do it again, or try to go back and make amends in some way. Go and find out the child that you put up for adoption that you abandoned. Go back and apologize to all the people that you think you may have insulted when you were an alcoholic. Pray, meditate. Beyond me mentioning to you that some of these maps I have drawn, of me saying that there are no such things as three isolated circuits, there is a validity to all of this. I'm about to use one of the maps again. The validity is there, or how would I know about it? How could I make it up? The validity is there. How could I make it up if it were not? And how is it that some of you can see the validity of it? But you might ought to note that it is strangely weirder than the sorts of things that life normally has so-called spiritual spokesmen or organizations involved with, and that is telling you about things that no one can verify. That is, that there is an old man, an old woman, an old goat that lives somewhere up in the clouds on Mount Olympus in Chattanooga. No one can find this God, and this God spoke to me and told me this is what's going to happen to you when you die. Notice how popular that is. It always has been, because no one can verify it. I bring all this up, I haven't lost my place, to mention to you, I'm fixing to draw the map and give you another name for something that in a sense does not exist, but the reality of it exists. The name of it doesn't exist because I made it up. Back to the nervous system. The nervous system and more or less man's brain and line level consciousness. You recall in some times past I had mentioned that all of humanity has what amounts to a loose wire, that the system, the wiring system in man's brain seems to run up and it runs out of steam. I had primarily mentioned it on the basis of, remember, that substance in the blood. But also the bioelectrical energy, in a sense, runs out along with the blood. And I mentioned that everyone has what amounts to a loose end up here, which is part of the accounting for everyone's dissatisfaction. And the people correctly attracted to this have a loose wire of a particular kind. But now let me give you something new. I'm going to draw a little box and call that the juncture box. Now, although there's not a little square box in your brain, this does exist. And it's in a different place in everyone's nervous system. But there is a juncture box. It is the place where all of this jumps from what I have been referring to as the hardwired circuitry of everything you apparently have been. Everything from a decent, misunderstood person to a drunk. Now, the basis of everyone's questions in the beginning, and that which many people for a long time believe still plagued them, that there are past eras, sins, faux pas that must be accounted for in some way, that there is some kind of burden still on people that they cannot seem to get their hands on this great mystical activity in which I'm involved, unless they in some way can work out the fact, unless I can help them explain away that they spent 20 years in the gutter drinking, or that they spent 5 years with a swami somewhere that ended up in an insane asylum and you decided it was all a waste of time, or that I in some way treated my mother very badly and then she died, and I worry about it all the time. I'm just sure it's some kind of karma. I can't get any further because this troubles my soul. The thing about forgetting the past is not a psychological ploy. It is a reality, and it is a biochemical reality. It's biochemical on the basis that this juncture box at line level is where everyone's bioelectrical energy stops, where everyone's biochemical energy runs out, where the MV12 in the blood is dissipated. Beyond this box, which all this is about, for me describing another circuit is what the work of this kind has always been about, is there is a place here that you take where the energy is normally run out and this one piece is left, and it carries over into an area that is virgin. In this area, there is no past. There is absolutely no past. In this area, there is no personal psychological self. Well, let me put it to you in a way I would prefer, I like better now that I said it. There is no psychological self in the ordinary sense. The thing about the past, let me see if I can be a little more colloquial, which you and I know we can. You and I know I can. Below this line, below the juncture box, everybody is a yokel. And I assume you know what that is, a rustic, a bucolic lad or lassie, a boob, a peckerwood. But everyone is a yokel. It matters not where you were born, it matters not what your environment was, whether your mother and father were college professors, that you grew up in the crib listening to Brahms and Wagner, and hearing your parents discuss philosophy, or whether you grew up on a farm and your parents and all of your peers very likely had no more than an elementary school education. It doesn't matter. From the line down at any given time and place, everyone is born on a farm. Everyone is a yokel compared to this. Getting involved with this above the juncture box is becoming cityfied. It is becoming sophisticated. For you and your people, I'll do it again, since I always swear that I won't do it anymore. You've got to remember, this is not an attack on humanity, because we are not right and humanity wrong. On the contrary, given the choice, a binary choice, they're right and we're wrong. But I want you to try and see something. That's why I'm saying that everyone is a yokel. All of them out there, all of us. You were born down on the farm. Up to that line, up to the juncture box, everyone is a damn yokel. It doesn't matter what your background, doesn't matter your education, it doesn't matter what your experiences have been, you are a yokel. Now, the reason I changed it over from just the juncture box is I want you to try and hear this. Just take what I'm telling you for a few minutes, that everyone is born down on a farm, in a rustic environment, in a bucolic, unsophisticated environment, because down on the farm below the line, down on the farm, there is only one level of awareness at any given time, and that is the general awareness of everyone. And someone else sitting in this room or someone else on this planet may have grown up thinking that sophisticated music was Buck Owens compared to Roy Acuff. And so if you grew up believing, what? It's too loud? You mean it's the wire? I thought somebody was going to fix this. Someone else, of course, believing that the epitome of civilized music was Bach or Beethoven, could, from a subjective, that is an ordinary viewpoint, believe that in some way I am less a yokel than the previously described person, and that's not true. At line level, what I want you to see is that everyone is a yokel because no one understands any more than anyone else. You may have had different exposures to the overall wiring of life at that time. You may have a different educational background or different so-called cultural background, but as far as what you understand about yourself and life, you're a yokel as much as someone who had many times the education. So everyone is born on the farm. Now, if we were talking ordinary, we would say that, all right, it's all the pressures, all the environment of the farm, which is not. But that's what an ordinary person would say to preface this. So when you go back to the farm, all of those original pressures, everything that made you a yokel, come immediately back into play. Anytime you go back on the farm, you're a yokel. Anytime you go back on the farm, you're going to think like a yokel, you're going to speak like a yokel, you're going to move like the yokel that you were. And any dream, any notion that in some way I've got to overcome this, I've got to change it, is it still working or not?
Just an occasional popping sound. Everything's getting on.
Somebody take care of this before I start. Any notion in some way I am going to overcome this is going to be explained away. What you're saying is this, without knowing it, that anytime I want to, I'll revert back to my bucolic environment. But I will no longer be a yokel, and you're an idiot. But now you should see it. You've had every occasion, even you people around here for just a little while, you've had every occasion to see this whole basis that I'm going to do better. Something in me says I am going to change. I'm no longer going to be some kind of driven idiot. But first I've got to do something about all these years I spent being a driven idiot. If you go back on the farm, you're back being a yokel. You're going to do everything apropos to being yokelized. And you cannot change it. All you can do is get above that, where one sense of an individual personality seems to reside is back on the farm. And back on the farm, everyone is a yokel. Another aspect of this, I'll see if some of you can hear it. I tried some years ago, one time I started to mention this to someone, and at that time it did not have a very beneficial effect. And so I will try a different, since I've waited all these years, I will try a slightly different approach. Because some of you are no longer what you were then. A large portion of life's population believes that they are priceless china. Now some are wired to feel so, and some are wired not. But a large portion of people attracted to this are no exception. A generous portion of you people, originally attracted to this sort of thing, believe that in some way you're priceless porcelain. And it's on this basis that you believe in some way that you are unusually emotional, sentimental, that your feelings in some way lie right on the surface, that you are not a run-of-the-mill bricklayer, female truck driver. No. And with this comes a kind of fear. With this comes a kind of bucolic stupidity. The one time I tried to mention a little about this to someone, I'm going to tell you what it was so that perhaps you can follow some of what I'm getting at. When I decided to mention this again in response to some of the new people's inquiries, I at first decided not to make up any name or term for it so that you wouldn't have something to go, oh, aha, okay, I'll write that down and remember it. But I may do it anyway, because that has both its pros and its cons. But the time I started talking to someone about this, the person said, there was somebody out of the ordinary. It was not just an ordinary person in the street I was talking to. But I started describing a certain approach to something they asked me about, and they couldn't resist. They said, oh, well, it's almost fatalistic, right? And I perceived that I had picked the wrong time and the wrong approach. I was not surprised, and from many viewpoints, what I tried to describe to the person and what I'm about to slip into, an ordinary person could say, well, that's a kind of fatalism. And it's not a kind of fucking fatalism, I'd say it's fatalism. Fatalism is a binary word, and binary words have no meaning whatsoever, other than what life says they mean right now. This kind of fear, this kind of feeling that you are in some way unusually sensitive in a beneficial way, although people ask me, I know this must be some kind of beneficial gift to be as sensitive as I am, except sometimes it's an inconvenience. Sometimes it frightens me. It's being able to accept the mortal minimum. And I mean this, and this is where the person wanted to say, it's a kind of fatalism you mean. And it's not, because you've got to understand that fatalism, as it's called, is simply a hardwired phenomenon. Some people are wired up to be, quote, fatalistic, some aren't. But it's all below the juncture box. It's all in the past. It's all in what appears to be one's ordinary personality, one's ordinary psychology. It's along these lines. Let us say that you decided let us say that a physician found that you'd had some physical ailment, and a physician looked at it and said, well, I know what that is, and it's not mortal, and you can live with it, or we can do some small in-office surgery, and it will probably stop that physical pain, very good likelihood, or at least reduce it considerably. And you say, all right, most important question is, how much does it cost? And you find out that you could afford it. And then you say, is it painful? You go and actually do it here in the office? And he says, yeah, that's, yeah, it's painful. And it's something, let us say that they cannot give you obviously not a general anesthesia in the office. And he says, it's something we've got to do, and you've got to be full in your senses, and it's going to, it is painful. I'm going to tell you that, and it's going to last about 45 minutes. But after you rest, you can go home, and I'll give you enough good dope. In a couple of days, you'll get over it. But now, it is painful. I'm going to tell you this. We're probably going to have to strap you down to do it. Maybe I'll find another example in a second. I figured I'd start somewhere. Now, don't take this just on a red circuit physical level, because this is into emotional problems. I'll throw in a few in a minute. But let's take this one, because almost everybody has some physical fright. You're supposed to. But this is the way it comes out in many people. Is a sincere, hardwired belief that, wait a minute, if it's so painful that you're going to have to strap me down and you can't give me any painkiller, I got to be fully I've got to be fully conscious. We're having wiring problems for you people on the tape. Now we're back rolling. Let us say that it strikes you in some very personal way that I can't do this. That before you went into the physician, you thought, go in the hospital, they put me to sleep. If I can raise the money and sell my car, if I can get rid of this, I will. Don't take all of this literally. I'm just using one example, and I'll pull up another one or two in a second. But it literally, as people would say, puts the fear of God in you, that I cannot do this. You having trouble again?
Could you raise it up a little?
That you believe that you cannot do it. Is it all right? Now take that in the full sense of what I'm saying. Just take this example. That there is something, I cannot do that. Or if I took it too far, there are many people that let their teeth fall out before they'll be confronted with a root canal. The feeling, I cannot personally put up with this. I cannot stand it. If you can't get past the point to see what I'm talking about, that I did refer to as it's like an acceptance of the mortal minimum. It's like this, which is not fatalism, because you've got to have some understanding. It's this. You ask the doctor, has any other human ever done this before? He says, yes, I've done it on someone. That's it. Another live human being came in here of his own or her own free will, not brought in a straitjacket, came in, paid you the money, and you did this, and they lived. He says, sure. That's it. I repeat, it's not just a physical phenomenon. People believe, such as this. The person with whom I had my closest relationship up and left me. I can't stand it. I'm going to die. Well, fuck it, you're going to die, but you're not going to die from that. And if you do die from that, you didn't belong here anyway, and it's not my problem. It's none of my concern whatsoever. It's almost none of your concern. You're going back to the farm to die. The belief that I did something terrible in the past, and it was uniquely terrible. You're just an absolute yokel. I can't survive it since my mother died. And it happened when she and I were still on bad terms. I can't bear it. How many people's mother has died? Most of the people I know. How many people do you know had a thwarted love affair, got walked out on? I guess 9% of the people I ever met. I am not being funny. And the understanding of it, of course, is past these words, but I am telling you the absolute beginning of it. You simply look around, or if you must, ask someone, has any other human been through this and lived? And if the answer is yes, which it is, if there is any potential to you whatsoever, that is the final word. That's it. It is not fatalism. As many of you know, in the past I have even thrown around the term Superman. I don't dwell on it, and none of you new people, I don't use it out in public. It is not some form of some super race or some super group of us. I meant it as one of my apparently semi-facetious remarks to try and get you to see something. But there is a reality to that. It's not simply Superman on the basis of these very routine ideas of occult phenomenon. It's not Superman of suddenly I will feel no pain. Suddenly I will never die. Suddenly I will never be sick again from going through this great mystical work in which I have involved myself. It's not that, but it's this. Has any other human ever put up with this before? And if so, and you don't understand that, all right, that's the end of the subject. If you're not to the point that you don't understand this already and you've got to go through this procedure, which is fine, it's fine or I wouldn't mention it. That, all right, this is about to kill me. I can't stand this. I can't stand the thought of it. Has any other person, anybody ever put up with this before, been through this? And if the answer is yes, which it is, and you don't understand that that should be, through experience, not in theory, that that is the end of the subject. You don't really belong in this. You don't belong into it as much as I need some more people. You may be all right being here, but you still don't understand the point of it. As long as you can whine, as long as you will entertain the voice that, woe is me. And I don't care if woe is you. You could be dying. Can any of you imagine if I was dying right now that I would call you, that you would know about it? Would I call anybody to the hospital room? Would I tell you that I'm dying? If you believe I would, you're really an idiot. And I'm not just using me as the primo example, but I'm telling you what this is about. And all of your ideas that you are a priceless, fragile piece of something is a delusion. It's all right out in the ordinary world because some are wired up to be, quote, priceless little china, and some are wired up to be, you know, half-inch thick beer mugs that you can bounce off concrete. But so what? That's simply back to some are and some aren't. But I'm talking about attempting to do this. Anytime you feel that you are exceptionally priceless, that you are exceptionally fragile, that you are exceptionally prone to be hurt physically and otherwise, and you look around and you say, has any other person ever been through this? And the answer is always yes. And you don't understand that, all right, that's it. There is nothing else to say. Nothing. If you cannot operate at the minimum that the rest of life, and the rest of life includes one other person, that one other person, not involved with this, some ordinary yokel has put up with this before, has lost his mother, has lost his best girlfriend, has gone through this procedure in a doctor's office before and lived, you've got to do it. And you've got to do it's not even the term. This is so much at the heart of it, I even hate talking about it. I don't like talking about it. It makes my mouth curl up to have to describe it, to have to tell you it's true, because you should know it's true. And too many of you don't, which continues to disturb me at times. It's not a matter of some theoretical Superman. It's not a matter that just hanging around me is going to make you immortal. It's not a matter that that we're the chosen people of the gods in some way, and only we can do it. It's none of that. But it's this, what you're attempting to do is absolutely extraordinary. It's not to make you immortal on this level. It's not to make you immune from pain. But if you don't understand that there is a minimal level, if some other human has ever gone through this procedure, and you still entertain those bucolic voices that say, ooh, I can't stand that. What in the hell do you believe that you're up to? Well, I'm going to someday think great thoughts like you do. Someday I'll be able to see all these strange things and understand it. Not if your heart can be broken. Not if you decide, I'd like to cure this pain, but you might got to put up for 45 minutes, describe it, and he describes it. We're going to cut you here, and we're going to have to pull this bone and break it, and you got to be awake. And you go, no, I nearly faint thinking about it. Maybe. But there's one question. Has any other human done this? Oh, yeah, I did one last week on a woman. Wasn't necessary for me to throw that in, for some of you macho fuckers. If any other humans ever put up with this, that's the end of the subject. There's nothing else to be said. That my heart has been broken. Has anyone else's heart ever been broken in the same condition? Yes. Well, that's it. If you cannot operate, if you cannot accept the minimal level of what goes on in life, all of this is just a game to you. You're going to continue to live in the past as ordinary people must. You're going to continue to revert to the farm. You will fall right back when you attempt to do things. When I try to prod you to do something, even when I try to prod you to consider something up here. No, that's not right. No. You're just back on the farm, trying to argue with me, trying to explain yourself to me. Well, you don't know how weak I've been. You don't know the kind of childhood I had. You don't know how much of my life I've wasted. And so now I'm just barely getting strong enough perhaps to take a few little steps if you would help me along. Help you along to what? There's no way to go back and patch up the past. You were born on the farm, you were a yokel. Everybody was. It's the end of the subject. Back on the farm, everybody's afraid of something. Everybody. If they're not afraid of snakes, they're afraid of cows. The person next to you says, cows give me no problem. But I can't stand spiders. Somebody else, hey, I carry spiders in my pockets. But pushy women, whew, no. Somebody else says, women, doesn't bother me, but I ain't going to let no damn doctor cut on me. I'd die. It's always something. It's not a matter that you in some way just suddenly overcome all fear, all ability to be, quote, emotionally hurt. It's not that. But it's this. To realize this is a normal procedure. I do not consider it a normal procedure in my life. I did not count on this. So say the voices. And it happened to me. And I am so priceless, I am so delicate, that I don't know how I'll survive this. Question, has anyone else survived this? You're surrounded by them. End of subject. If it's not the end of the subject, go ahead and break. Go ahead and crack. But you don't belong in this. Other people. This comes up periodically. Some of you know periodically also, I have to turn people out of this. People that's been around for several years. The last few years, as is not unusual, always came about, if you had been around, I don't announce what goes on, you just notice that people are gone. It generally happens, to use everyday terminology, somebody shoots their mouth off. If somebody in here turns to somebody else in the group and just overt hostility. Several occasions it's happened that was directed toward me, which means nothing to me personally. If you think that I care what any of you people think, or what anybody thinks, you're wasting your time here. But what they don't understand is if you're going to fall back to being a yokel and you're going to turn to somebody in this group, or you're going to turn to me, which just represents what you're trying to do, and be sarcastic, be flippant, be cynical, be hostile, not toward me, that's not the point, but toward what you're attempting to do, and then attempt to explain it away to me, to yourself as well. This means a lot to me. It means more than my life, but hey, give me a break. Sometimes I slipped. Now, to begin with, people are first involved with this, and some of you people are listening to this whenever, that I don't know. If I don't know you, you're just casually watching this on tape or seeing some public presentation in some other city at some other time, it means nothing to me. You can leave and think, what an idiot. What a bunch of shit. But anybody attempting to actually become involved with this, you cannot crucify this. You can't turn around to somebody here, somebody outside, and think that it means nothing to say, if somebody says, are you still involved with some kind of group? And you say, yeah. And they say, well, what is it? And you don't feel good. You've had a drink. Your mother just died. You just had root canal. You went, I don't know, sometimes I think it's a pile of shit. Past a very early point, you can't do that. Not because it bothers me, not because it hurts my feelings, and not because it might hurt someone's feelings in here when I tell you not to do it amongst yourselves. If you don't realize that you cannot entertain those kind of yokel voices and let them speak for you, and then continue this, you're a third-degree idiot. Since I started classifying idiots tonight, you can't do it. You can come back, you can hang around a little while, but once you start that, all of you should know by now, that's been around here for any length of time, you've got to get above this juncture box. That's the way you've got to treat people in here. I enforce, I make the rule that you simply can't be hostile overtly to each other. You can't deal with anybody unless you're going to be a yokel. You can't deal with your parents if they're still alive. You can't deal with people in life on the basis that you will let voices back on the farm call your mother an idiot or your father a fool. That is a part of your farm environment, and it becomes a constant part of you every time you're back on the farm. That's why people feel, ordinary people, feel as though the past is an absolute weight. They are correct. It's not just a negative weight, it is a part also of the continuity, is a part of the genetic memory of life itself through humanity, of remembering all this, of groups of people feeling as though they're paying off sins of their culture, their race, their religion that happened thousands of years ago. From one viewpoint, from the viewpoint of this, that's insanity. To believe in some way, I got a grudge against my father. I'm paying off my father was an alcoholic, and therefore I have a tendency to drink because of the way he treated me. If you're ordinary, that's as good as any. If you're ordinary, there's some truth in that. If you're back on the farm, all the pressures, as it would seem to an ordinary person, all the pressures are back there. You're back in your overalls, you're back to being a yokel, and you're back to living tied to the past. There is no escape from it. Every fear, every grudge, every piece of anger that you ever experienced in the past will be with you always. And if you're back on the farm and you badmouth this, which is the same thing as badmouthing me, if you get out here and you badmouth that, you can talk to yourself. Then every time you go back to the farm, which is where you were when you did that, every time you go back, that is now a part of you. It will always be a part of you, and that's what gives a sensation that I in some way have got to pay off this karma, as some of you people like to call it nowadays. It's bad things I've done, and they got to be worked out. Well, that ain't my problem. If that's the way in which you believe that you live, and let's base it, the karma and other lives are going to come back here, get the hell away from me. I'm not telling you whether there's any validity there or not, but I got nothing to do with it. That is a long-range idea if it were true. And what I'm here doing is something to happen in the next 10 or 15 years before I go. Something before you go. But everything that happened from here up, there's your past. There's the past of all humanity. Everything that happened up to now, there's no real way to describe it. I can say it's useless, it's impertinent, it's irrelevant, it's shit. I can say all that. to get above that juncture box, it's simply, in a quite real sense, as some of you know, but not enough of you, it just ceased to exist. That's what it amounts to. It's not a trick. It's not some kind of mental ploy that you pull. It's just the past ceased to exist. It's no more than yesterday's rain. All the wiring back on the farm, down here a cow can moo, and your partner can go, oh, and start dreaming about the day your mother died and all the cows mooed just before that. But it's noise. You understand the impertinence of it. It is the noise of the air conditioner going. It is of no pertinence. It's of no relevance. There is nothing to go back and rectify. And you cannot excuse your behavior after a certain length of time. If I ever start taking you seriously, if I ever find out who you are, even you people out of town, in a sense, I begin to take you seriously. If I pay any attention to you, if I ever answer a letter, if I get to know your name, if you hang around long enough, then you can't ever crucify, you can't ever criticize this and stay with it. And you've got to see the reality of that, because you're simply bleeding yourself, and I don't have time to fool with it. I'm not going to try to talk you into it. I'm not going to try to go back and rehabilitate you and listen to you say, well, I got carried away and I went out and I talked about you and some of the people here, and I'm real ashamed of it. And I shouldn't have done it. I couldn't help it. I was out of control. I understand all that. I understand all that, but after a certain length of time, that's no excuse whatsoever. And you've got to see it. That doesn't excuse anything. Back on the farm, it excuses everything. And if I throw you out, there's no hard feelings. As soon as I throw you out, most people, I can't remember their name a week later if I saw you. No hard feelings, none. There's no feelings whatsoever. You can't excuse that. And you've got to see why. Not because I say, but it covers many areas besides this. This is what's of importance to me. But you can't go around and badmouth the person you're living with. If you think you're in some kind of, you enjoy basically your relationship with somebody you're living with now. All of you should see, and we're talking about a biochemical reality. We're not talking about any psychological flim-flam. You go out and stand around with some of the guys at work and people start bad-mouthing the women they live with, and you chime in to any degree. Or if you just nod along, if you just listen to the partner in you starts nodding when they're talking about the way women drive me crazy and she's always doing this and this and this, and your partner says something about, boy, you don't know, your mind does so-and-so, and you nod along, you agree with it, you take the past, you take that yokel voice as being you, you're taking that relationship. You're taking a relationship with somebody else, a biochemical magnetic attraction, and you're beginning to short-circuit it. You're taking another person that you say, I've got some great feeling for, sexually and otherwise, personally, intellectually, and you're taking this kind of bond you felt, and you begin to stab on it. And forget, just fuck any excuse you got. Well, I didn't feel good, it was hot, I spoke before I knew what I was doing. I don't really feel that way. You get back on the farm and you really feel that way. That's why everybody is all involved throughout history, this feeling of ambivalence of feeling. Oh, I love her, and sometimes I hate her. That's farm phenomenon. And all of you people that believe you can't stay in a relationship, or you want to ask me for some kind of trick, why is it you can't stay with people? I've told you over and over. Why is it I can't seem to hold on to a man? Why is it I can't seem to stay with any woman? Why is it women I like, after 2 or 3 months, they seem to treat me like I was a shoe that was too tight? What kind of psychological problems do I have? What kind of karma am I paying off? You're just a yokel. That's what happens on the farm. All divorces are on the farm. All split-ups are on the farm. All hurt feelings happen on the farm. All people being misunderstood live on a farm. Up in the city, what few sophisticated people are on this planet, they don't get their feelings hurt. They don't insult one another. They don't misunderstand what one person says to another. They understand quite clearly what they say to each other, and they understand what ordinary people, what the yokels say to them. They understand it, yeah. They understand the yokels' excuses. They don't take it personally. They have no hard feelings about it because they have no feelings about it. I want you to try, as much as I've wandered around with this, to understand me dragging out the farm and the city. It represents, quite simply and directly, the reality of things that you are already experiencing. Everyone is born down here on the farm. Everyone is a yokel. And anytime you fall back in, you fall back to that level, don't fool yourself with any idea, well, I'm struggling. I'm doing my best. You don't know my problems. There's only so many problems out on the farm. And I must tell you, I know them all, or else you should really wonder why you're listening to me. All the pains are down on the farm. I know what they are. But anytime you fall back into going back home, going back to the farm, don't fool yourself by believing, well, I am wrestling with a problem. This is something that must be worked out. You don't know the terrible things that happened to me behind the barn when I was a kid. Yeah, I do. That don't make a damn. If that hadn't happened to you, something else would have happened to you. It's all irrelevant. If you're going to do this. To life, it's very relevant. It had to happen. It had to happen to somebody. It happened to you. If it hadn't happened to you, it happened to somebody else. And some of the things that happened to other people didn't happen to you, and some of the things that didn't happen to them had to happen to you. You're back to, you either do or you don't. But any other comments about that, any other questions are absolutely irrelevant. Any feelings that I can't handle what's going on is impertinent. You don't understand what this is. If you cannot mortally accept the minimum activity, the minimum apparent pain, the minimum disappointment that happens on this planet to at least one other person, you do not understand what this is about. You don't. And there's not much to you, unless you can see it pretty quickly. Some of you, it's going to be, it's a very iffy process whether you ever will. And so I'm dragging out again to try and just push your face into it. If you truly believe that I am physically, emotionally, I am in some way a very fragile little piece of china. And there's some things that I don't think I'll ever get over. There's some things I don't believe I can ever understand, that I can ever accept. You are an extremely iffy proposition here. If one other person on this planet's ever gone through it and lived, that is the end of the subject. That is the end of the inquiry. That is the cessation of any concern as to whether I can do this and stand this or not. I mentioned to you that after a certain time there's no excuse for crucifying this kind of activity and your involvement, or even criticizing it. Everyone keeps going back to the farm to some degree. Almost all of you. Hardly anyone's immune to some lapses into it. But that is not an excuse after you once have some understanding of this. So if you got to go back on the farm, by God, you had better make it a solitary excursion. It had better be a solitary experience. That is, if you're back on the farm, keep your mouth shut. If you're back on the farm, go lock yourself in a room somewhere. But at least keep your mouth shut. Everyone should be able to understand that by now. There's no excuse that, listen, I was so upset. Something reminded me of my dead parents. Something reminded me of my first love. You remember the one I told you about that ran off with the tire salesman at a Texaco station? God, give me a break. I was so upset. I said what I said. You're right, I said it, and I shouldn't have, but you just don't know the circumstances. Oh, yeah, I do. You're back on the farm. You're a yokel. And if you don't understand that you can keep your damn mouth shut by now, I don't care if you believe you're about to explode. I don't believe if you and your partners are both agreed, listen, my little heart is about broken. Now, life has got to give me some slack, or you people have got to give me some slack, or you got to give me some slack. I was feeling very upset. You just don't know. And for me to just slip up and say what I said, the way I was kind of short and hostile to somebody in here, you don't know the circumstances. If I once begin to take you seriously, there are no circumstances. Don't bother to ever tell me that. But you should be able to see by now, don't listen to the voices tell you, listen, there's circumstances. There are no circumstances. I am back on the farm. Or as many people would say, I am in a funky mood. I am in a bad mood. Things have come back upon me, memories. Something triggered off in me that which just puts me in this kind of real funk. I was very upset. I was very angry. You're back on the farm. Keep your damn mouth shut. Stay away from anybody that has any significance. Stay away from everybody in here. Stay away from me. Don't write me. Don't talk to anyone about this. Don't talk to anyone about yourself. You should make a trip back on the farm when you have to. Make it an absolutely solitary excursion. When you feel it, get away from everybody. Go lock yourself in your room and take the phone off the hook and don't talk to anybody. If anyone thinks that that's not possible, or if any of you really think that in fact that might be unhealthy, you should have never left the farm. You should have never tried to become hip, because you ain't going to make it, Jack. You're going to be a yokel the rest of your life. You may have picked up some of my terms, but you don't know how ridiculous you're going to sound going back on the farm when I throw you out of here, or when you drift off, and go back and try to take these terms back to the other yokels, and go back and buy yourself a turban, and you go back and start talking like this. Even life, with that great guideline of some do and some don't, may take just a fleeting notice of, what in the fuck have I wrought down there? A few other little matters. This is constantly in front of you. It's a kind of certain extremes on another spectrum I wanted to point out that life has arranged. And the tune goes like this, that there are people that are wired up and made to take all manner of immediately inalterable affairs as being of supreme importance. For instance, assuming all of you try to be sophisticated enough to be generally at least read up to contemporary times, popular periodicals, newspapers, talk shows, news media continually talk about the necessity nowadays in our part of the country of some intelligence in one's investments, in one's portfolios. And the people reading this, the people hearing this, are going to die in debt. The so-called yuppies, as they're called right now. The middle class. Periodicals are filled every issue, every week. All the magazines are constantly about, nowadays, perhaps even the middle class, even the younger professional people, perhaps you should go ahead and have your own financial manager. Sears now has financial managers, like $250, you go in there, and they're going to give you a financial plan suggesting what to do with your financial portfolio. And the people going in there, the average person, I bet, going in there is probably $2,000 in debt on their Master of Visa card. And they're talking about, well, what should I do? I'm expecting to get $200 from my Aunt Lily on my birthday. And they take it very seriously. Well, perhaps we should, what kind of retirement plan do you have where you work? Maybe we should consider IRAs. Maybe you should go into the money market. Or, now wait a minute, the money market last week is running right now, as a matter of fact, about a quarter of a point ahead of 3-year CDs. Hey! And you paid $250 for that, and you got $200 to invest. What the hell difference does it make whether you're getting 7.2 or 7.59? I just grabbed another example. It appears to be, on the surface, of supreme importance, but it's of immediate, inalterable, unchangeable, the affair. In other words, it has no real significance to the people involved. Now, I can stretch it out a little further. It gets harder for some people to see, but the continuing concern, this is not a contemporary phenomenon, of my children's future. How we should all be working for the future generations. And we cannot, I'm not going to my grave personally, with this river here in our beautiful city still polluted, when it's going to be my grandchildren having to put up with this. The affair is immediately inalterable. Part of life's masterstroke is it's already built into man genetically to keep working for life's benefit. But as far as the individual concerned, or I've got to do something, I've saved my money and I'm going to fly over. I'm taking off from work. They're having a peace march in Oslo next week, and by God, I'm going to be there. I'm going to carry my sign saying, Russia and the U.S., wise up. There are people wired up to do that, and it's serving a purpose in life. But the belief that this is of supreme importance. Now, there's some people wired up for that. As soon as we turn the tape over, we'll go to the other side of the spectrum. Stay tuned. The other end of this kind of binary spectrum that I have drawn out for you are those that are forced to take everything as being meaningless. Can you imagine some good red circuit people coming out of the mines or the factory lines out of life's great corporation, ending up in the bar, and them staying around watching TV, and here comes a program about these people flying from all over the world to get little signs and to march down the streets of Oslo saying, "Stop all wars." And those bricklayers and carpenters have a few drinks and look at that. To them, it is absolutely meaningless. And I'm being charitable. They'd say, communist idiots and all that sort of thing. But to them, it is absolutely meaningless. Or for them to hear about, young professionals now going into analysis because of the stress of their job. And maybe some bricklayer is sitting there watching TV, and before he can change the channel, on the news it has a little thing about the number of young professional, white middle-class Protestants in this country, college graduates now having to go into analysis because many of them are finding they can't get past the $30,000 a year threshold. And how many of them feel as though they're developing neuroses because they're still driving Volkswagen Rabbits instead of Audis. Now, a bricklayer looks at that and thinks, it's meaningless. Or how everyone needs an investment portfolio, a financial manager. Of course, it gets into others. Many of the basic general types of this other extreme would find things as, like this, religion in general, any idea of some kind of unusual knowledge in the world, it's all meaningless. The reason I bring this up again, what appears to be a binary situation, is that you have got to see these kind of examples I pull out that life uses, and you have got to be able to expand yourself laterally, to blow up the farm, to expand in all possible ways at the bare minimum is the basis below line level consciousness, enough that you can feel and you can understand such extremes, that they're not funny, they're not silly, they're not ridiculous. They are, at the normal level, they are overt, observable extremes of life's nervous system through man at any given time, in any area, whatever he was looking at, religion, investment, getting ahead in the American rat race, ideas of peace, feeding the hungry, It's whatever the extremes are, one of them, you're going to be already wired up to be more attracted to. You have got to be expanded enough in all areas that you can feel and you can understand both of the extremes. One more aspect I want to mention. And I have certainly not changed the subject from where I began tonight. Have any of you ever thought that everybody on the farm, all the yokels, you and everybody else, you and all of your kinfolks, you live your life as a program of crisis control? And that's it. There seems to be smaller and larger crises, or maybe we can call it all the way from crisis control to catastrophe management. But that is the basic program. That's the way people are wired up. The yellow circuit, what appears to be one's yokel personality, talks otherwise about plans, what I'm going to do. But look at what I'm pointing out to you. The way at line level consciousness, the way you and everyone else lives is on a basis of crisis control. The only thing that seems to happen is it's always, I'm trying to cover my ass. I'm always trying to plug up new holes. I'm always trying to fix new flats. I'm always trying to patch up the same old car. I don't do anything to it until it suddenly throws another rod, has another flat, is burnt out some more. It is crisis control. Need I point out that you cannot live like that and do this? It is not really crisis control, of course, but by God, that's the way it appears. Do it not. If it don't, tell me I'm wrong and get out. Look around first. Give yourself at least 2 or 3 seconds to neuralize it. Something between you and the partner, the partnership, and everyone talks, or in most people, a good game plan. But then what is the program as it is lived? Crisis control. When do you act? When I got to act. When do you do something? When I'm forced to do something. Look at how many of you in here only seem to, not because I say so, many of you have already thought this, things to this effect, that you wish perhaps that we'd meet more, that I'd give more tasks, or perhaps I'd come over and see you in person once or twice a week and really get all over your young ass. Boy, really inspire you, threaten you personally instead of just periodically threatening everybody. I'm just going to walk away from this. It's threaten you personally. By God, straighten up, or something bad's going to happen to you. I'm going to throw you out. Boy, I wish you'd do that. Hey, I'd get on the ball then. Damn yokels. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life surrounded by shit kickers. You cannot live a program of crisis control and do this. Because remember, as I pointed out, believe me, there is no crisis going on. The crisis for someone attempting to do this is, oh Lord, don't let me turn back into a fucking yokel. Keep me off the farm. As long as you're dealing with the past, you're on the farm. As long as you believe the past has any validity, that the past demands any of your attention, that the past is controlling what you do, no matter how indirectly, you're on the farm. You're as unhip as you can be. You're as far away from doing anything involved with this as you can be. Everybody's parents have died or are going to die. Everybody has lost a love. Everybody has had someone that they thought they were in love with go. Everyone has had a fantastic dream of how I will obtain fame and fortune. And by the time you got to the secretary of the person who could have heard your plan, who you dreamed would go, oh, my God, that's what we've been waiting on. As soon as you got to the secretary of the person, the secretary said, well, give me just some idea. I just have some idea of what it is. And you told them, and they went, ha, 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 ha. Get out. That's happened to everybody. Everybody has broken a bone. Everybody has almost put their eye out. At least your mother said you would. Everybody has been afraid that they were going to die. Everybody at one time has spit up blood or thought they spit up blood or had a pain, and then suddenly read a Reader's Digest that said, I'm Joe or Helen Spleen, and it began to describe the things that will happen that are mortal with spleen problems, and you went, that's it. And it was always at midnight when you couldn't get a doctor. That's happened to everybody. Everybody has shot off their mouth and insulted their parents. Everybody has been insulting to their best friends. Everybody has seriously entertained the voices in you, your own partner, that said you're not worth a fuck. Everybody has. You cannot come up with anything new. There's nothing in your past that is unique. There is nothing in your future that will be unique as long as you're a yokel. If you want to know the future, just look at the past. Not in some so-called objective way. If you want to know the future, is look at what your voices tell you is your past, and you accept, yes, that is my past. I have been a ne'er-do-well, I've been a drunk, I've been a heroin addict, I have given away my children, I have thrown away loves that now mean so much to me. Now that I think about it, I could just cry. That's your future. That's it. Doesn't matter. You can't come up with any sort of so-called objective standard or ruling over what these voices say, like, oh, you didn't really treat your parents that bad. You can't argue with the teletype. It's giving you the impression of what happened. Your partnership accepts that as reality. And if you accept it, this is what has happened to me. I have wasted 10 years of my life. How long ago did you stop wasting it? Well, I quit drinking. I got off drugs, and I did that. It was about 1979. Well, what have you been doing since then? Oh, I don't know. I've been kind of, well, as you can imagine, I've been trying to kind of pull myself together and get my act together, and I don't know, try to get off on the right foot. You hadn't done a damn thing different since 1979. You say you have. And out in the ordinary world, you either do or you don't. Some have to say they do, some have to say they don't. But you're still a yokel. And nothing's going to change. I can't change it. If I could, I wouldn't. Back on the farm, nothing changes. It's just like going back home if you're born on a farm. You go back, and it's all the same. Ma and Pa may look a little older. The outhouse is still there. They hadn't redone the place. It's still got tar paper on the sides. Same old stumps in the yard. Everything's the same. It is for everybody. And your farm could have been Manhattan, San Diego, Chicago. But it's still the farm, and you go back, and nothing has changed. And of course, you understand you don't have to go back to New York State or California or Illinois. You go back home every time you fall back to line level consciousness. Every time you're back to, God, what a past I've had. You're back on the farm, and nothing ever changes. You go back, in a sense, it's comfortable. Because at least a fellow knows who he is. He's miserable, he's frightened, and he's a yokel. Oftentimes, as you should know, that I'm aware of what I'm doing, some of this can sound as though it certainly gets close to, at least in sound, and sometimes the intensity of what I do is a good wound-up rabbi, a little deranged Baptist preacher, But I must tell you people, it does get, it's not anybody's fault personally, but it does get trying to be surrounded by yokels. And whatever life is up to by producing this kind of thing. And having me here and this kind of information seep out, you know, it's never going to be widespread, not in the sense or not in the form I present it to you. You cannot go out in life in the binary world, which is ordinary people's real world. And just because I say things like the binary apparent 3D world is a preface to something I'm going to say, and you people take it as somewhat of a brush off of, well, that's the way people think things are, but and don't lose track of the fact that this binary three-dimensional world that I do like that to preface my sentence with, that is their reality, and it always will be. Look at you people that's been around here for some length of time. How little of it you really think you understand. If you keep waiting for me to suddenly put on a turban and a robe and step on the street and say, well, friends, it's time to tell you the truth. You've been living in a very flat world. You people are a bunch of yokels. And you expect I'm going to stand out and do that or send you out there and present in this form, and the people are going to go, oh my God, now that you mention it, you're right, I see it. I would be the biggest yokel of all. But you people should be doing more. You should be doing more. It's not a threat, but since I've taken this approach tonight to point out to you again, there is always the distinct possibility, always, just you don't know it, that I'll stop all this, that I'll just absolutely disappear. And that's just the end of it. You people should be doing more. You should be doing more to give me some excitement. But everybody keeps waiting. Everybody keeps worrying about the past, thinking that magic's going to happen. Now, I've told you enough. I've told you, if you belong here, how to create magic. And the first thing is, you have got to drop the past. You've got to understand that this is real. You have got to understand, if you make enough effort, that you get feels of it. You get your own taste of it. Many of you even write me notes. Last week, so-and-so happened. And even if I didn't know any more than that, you can just tell me in a few words. I do understand that you got above that juncture box. You got above the limitations, or you expanded, if you want to put it at the very minimal. You expanded your own wiring, and for a few seconds, for a few minutes, you were not the yokel that you were born. You were not the yokel that you in general were destined to be. And you just like to grab me and kiss me. Tell me how much this is worth. Next time I see you, you're back on the farm, as though it never happened. Or you're back on the farm, you may be rather silent, but you're looking at me like a lovelorn sheep. Or you're back suffering. That, yeah, I was beginning to think I was getting somewhere with this, but I don't know, my old girlfriend showed back up. The memories of the way I insulted my father before he died. Whatever it is, you have gone back to the farm, you're back in the past, and there's nothing to be done. Nothing. But as far as the old ideas of mystical experience, the ideas of all religions of a rebirth, of really being a true Jew, Muslim, etc., and being a new person, they're talking about at any given time, wherever they were, of getting above that juncture box where everything stops and you feed more energy to it. Up there, I am telling you a fact. In essence, what it amounts to, in essence, there is no past up there. It's noise at the very most. It's background noise. Might as well be static on a radio telescope. There just is none. Because you understand by then, if I'm back in the past, I'm back on the farm. And all my descriptions are just meaningless. It's just, you know it's not true. You know you can't do it. You know then where you are. You know where you can't go. And you also know what I mean by Superman. That if any other human has done this and survived it, that's the end of it. There's nothing else to say. I can't discuss it with anybody. I don't need to ask the doctor anything. I don't need to go find my best friend and say, what do you think? I don't need to go find my mother, my uncle, and say, let me tell you how my heart's been broken again, and maybe you can help me see my way through it. You also understand, sometime back I mentioned to you, if you ever begin to know what you're doing, there's nobody can criticize you. There are no heroes. And it's got nothing to do with any sort of insane egotism. When you understand that everybody, including you at the line, was born on the farm and you're all doomed yokels at that time, when you know any more, when you understand any more than everybody else, how can somebody hurt your feelings? How can anyone criticize you? How can anyone frighten you? That sounds rhetorical if you don't understand it. Rhetorical though it may sound, there is an absolute, very close reality. Yet as long as you're on the farm, it seems to be a constant battle of what's somebody going to think about me, what will somebody say about me, what am I going to say about myself, how can I get rid of these guilt-ridden voices that talk to me about my past and my evil ways. You people don't know how close sometimes it is to me just disappearing. It won't be in notice, just all be over. Because you don't know what little, it goes up and down, but how little I get paid for this. Very little excitement. That's why some of you get notes back that write me notes, and some of you people out of town letters. Just the smallest bit that I can really see and smell of any real growing sophistication, will always get a note back from me. I'm delighted. But by and large, you people are just quite content to be yokels. Just not the way you look at it, of course, but being yokels with the possibility of being exposed to someone, moi, that seems to be unusually sophisticated. How pleasing, how intriguing it is at times. Not bad if you could actually do all that shit. It might be interesting at least. But sometimes it even sounds like it might be what I should be doing. But ooh, the problems I have. Ooh, my delicate condition. We'll leave on a pleasant note.